Bueno, prosiguiendo con nuestras presentaciones del día de hoy, quisiera presentarles a una visita que tenemos de Estados Unidos. Ella se llama Ronny y es especialista en temas de optimización de tasa de conversión y análisis del comportamiento. Ella va a estar participando esta tarde también en un muy interesante workshop que les recomiendo lo consideren como parte de sus actividades del día de hoy. Dicho eso, Ronny, bienvenida. Gusto tenerte en Chile.
Hello. Hola. 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 Okay, so that's more or less the extent of my Spanish. So we're going to do this in English. First, I want to thank Pablo that brought me to this beautiful country of yours, Chile. Am I saying it right? Chile. And to Nicolas from Intelligentsia, who actually had to wait until midnight last night at the airport to make sure I actually survived this trip. What we're going to talk today about is what I lovingly call the last frontier of retail analytics. And if you think about what's happening today in retail, you hear a lot about technology, you hear a lot about analytics, you hear a lot about change. But the fact is that most of retail still today is happened in the physical store. And what happens between the point that the person goes into the store, a customer goes into the store, and until the customer gets out of the store, this is what we still consider a black box of data. Now, the technologies are changing this, and there's a new discipline that's being created about how you actually optimize that customer journey. And that discipline is called optimization, and our tool is behavior. So the topic of our conversation today is how we use behavior to optimize the physical stores. And it worked. Okay, this is a very fast presentation, so I hope you catch up with me. When you go into the physical store, the first question you have to ask is what do you want the physical store to be? What is the state? This is not about the future of the store. This is about where do you want your store to be within your strategy. And if you talk to people like Levi's Jeans, for instance, they will tell you that they have 50 different ways to define the physical store. If you're talking about Ultra Beauty, they will tell you that the store is a fundamentally different place today than it was years ago. So the number one question you have to answer to yourself is really, what do you want to do the store to be? The second question is, what is the role of technology? Because if you understand the concept of what your store wants to do, then you can understand which type of technology to use. Because I think if there's one thing to best describe how people relate to technology today in the store is the word overwhelmed. We're overwhelmed by tons of vendors and tons of people that come in and say, use my technology. Well, how do you make that determination? The last part, and this is a very critical component of how you look at the store, is what's the role of your associates. And there's two different ways of looking at it. Part of it is whether your business model is your high-touch or low-touch business model. Another part is what kind of activities those staff actually do. Are they cost-oriented or are they sales-oriented? So with these three challenges in mind, I'm going to go back into a little bit about what I do. So again, my name is Ronny Max, and I'm practically the only person in the world that does what we call CRO in physical stores. So when I say that to people, they ask me, okay, what does that mean? And I say, my job is to make you money with what you already have. Last year, I was part of the innovation group in Stanford University And one of the things that we try to do is to look at vision technology and the implication of vision technology inside the physical store. And you may know what vision analytics is in driverless cars, is finding the cat. It's all about imaging, is a lot of what the stuff that Facebook is doing behind the scenes in order to understand what people want. So vision technology has gone through a major change in the last couple of years. And the big question was that a truly disruptive technology? So when you think about the 10x factor is about not just having a technology that does something, but rather how does that affect the business? How does that affect the value in a 10x ways? And the answer to that was that in order to make those changes inside retail, we actually have to look at change management inside retail. So that led me to this year, we launched the Behavior Analytics Academy, and the idea here is to really think and focus about how you help retailers to really use the data in their organization. So let's first start with a little bit of a myth busting. The physical stores are not dead. This is from a survey that just came out from IHL Group. You actually saw parts of it in previous presentations. But the reality, not only that the physical stores are not disappearing, in many ways they are flourishing. And all the numbers tell us that in the future trends, the physical store is very much alive and well. But what is changing is the nature of the stores and the nature of how you sell. And this is very vivid in malls, because the malls are not dead either. But it is shown that about 80% of sales that are done today in shopping malls are done in only at 20% of the malls. And the reason for that is this whole shift into a concept we call customer experience. So why does the physical store even alive? Why people actually want it? This is the number one question you really have to ask, is what your customers want to do in the store. What do they want from the store? So this is just one out of the many surveys that are done today in the store, and they basically say that the people like to touch things. This is why they come to the store. And another part that they come to the store is convenience. They want to actually buy it as it comes. A lot of people want to come in and talk to a person. But if you take a theme out of all those answers, you'll find out that the real factor that brings or drives people into the physical store is that it is a social experience. This is the fundamental difference between the online world and the physical store. The physical store is a social experience. Even if you go and buy by yourself, it is still a social experience. So that brings me to the rise of behavior science. Behavior science is a very publicized. We're just starting to see the true results of it. But the reason this is so important in retail is because retail is about people. We talk about technologies, we talk about strategies, we talk about things, but at the end of the day, the main reason retail exists is because people buy stuff. So this is why understanding how people do is very important. Behavior science is very much in the news today, and we know it in three very important areas. It started with Daniel Kahneman winning the Nobel Prize of Economy in 2003, too. But the most important thing is, like 2 days ago, we just found out that another very famous professor in our field, one of the fathers of what we call economical behaviors, Professor Thaler from University of Chicago. He just won this year's Nobel Prize. So this is the big stuff. This is not something that comes out of nowhere. Has very serious implications. On the business side, one of the most well-known is this, the hook theory that came out of Nir Eyal out of Stanford. And it's used quite a lot in developing products and how you think about products. In the retail scenario, the person who really brought behavioral science into the field was Paco Underhill. And I don't know if you ever saw a presentation by Paco, but he's a very articulate gentleman who really basically said that if you really want to sell somebody, you have to understand how they behave inside the store. So online optimization, the way we know it today, is a very well-defined discipline in the online world. There's a process, there's about trillion different companies that do that. They use very specific tools, they use very different specific methodology. The fundamental difference between online optimization and physical store optimization is in the nature of the data and the nature of the technology. So there were some companies that tried to do that. Nobody has succeeded. So you have to understand that there's no direct translation. There's different rules. So how do we think about optimization in the store? And I think in terms of 5 different elements. First, we start with the people. Then we go into the concept of engage and the concept of conversion. And this is a key point that I hope you remember from here. Engage is about understanding the behavior of your customers. It's how we look at the customer behavior. Convert is about what your ability as a retailer to do, your call to action, how you define your thought process. Another part of behavior that is really critical is the concept of friction. And we're going to speak a little bit about friction. And then the last part is to look at the store. And every store is unique. Every store should be judged by itself. But there's, of course, some very specific rules that apply to the whole process. So let's quickly look at engage. When we're talking about customers, we usually talk about Apple and the big experience. Well, this store that Apple did, it took them 38 times to design the store that they really like. 38 times. There's a lot of aspects to this store. It's the design, it's the fact that you had tables, it's a lot about the associates. So there are a lot of components to this that brought it to the point of experience. The reason this is so important is because if you ask me to quantify experience, I have to go back into the details and tell you what experience actually means. Another very big component of this is the change from I have a store and the people will come to me. Now the stores, the physical stores, are coming to the customers. So pop-ups are a very well-known concept and they're very popular lately. But there's also stores within stores. This is another very big trend in department stores. There's many ways of selling. So the physical store, what we call the physical store, that terminology is changing. This is an example from Ulta Beauty, which they basically talk about competing against Amazon. They competed against Amazon when Mary Dillon took over about 5 years ago. They were just falling apart because 75% of their products are sold by Amazon. And they had to fundamentally change how that whole process worked. And the process of selling beauty today is one of the most interesting trends. There's a fundamental shift in how people sell beauty today in the world. Experience. This is a Costco store. And Costco is one of the most successful retail stories of our lifetime. It actually grew faster than Amazon. Think about it. It is much stronger than Amazon as far as growth and started more or less the same time. So even in a Costco store, which is in a warehouse, you have to think in terms of the experience. So why? So when we start analyzing experience, we start analyzing it in the terms of the 5 senses. So what you see there, you can see people touch, you can see the smell of the crowdiness, the concept of the market. But the most important thing that a lot of people don't understand is that you actually have a very strong smell in Costco. Think about it. It's a warehouse with a smell of bakery. If you walk into a Costco store, what you smell is the fresh baked bread. So what Costco has done is took the warehouse concept and created it into a plethora of all the 5 senses. So the next phase in this process of engagement is to understand who your customer is. And I specifically put Wonder Woman there because Gal Gadot, this lady who plays the Wonder Woman, we come from the same place. So demographically, we're the same country. We are both women, but guess what? We don't have the same taste in clothes. What Wonder Woman buys and what I buy is 2 very different things. So it's a very different target audience. So how do you know? Well, the number one thing to do is really ask your customer. So in the optimization process, surveys play a lot of role into understanding who your customer is. You also can look at location marketing and how you prevent your promotion, how you think about this. And location-based data is a very strong trend that is coming on today, and it has huge implications on how we design the optimization. So there's innovative technologies in engagement. Find a store next to me. This is an AI component that was added to Maps in Google. Convenient to me, you now can actually buy places in the supermarket. This is a Tesco store in Gatwick Airport. And personal to me, which means you can actually change the way I look or create some kind of diversion in the way it works. So this is a beauty product. The next phase, and this is the phase where my specialty lies, and I love this, because it's about quantifying the activities. There's a fundamental difference between what people say they're going to do and what people actually do. So now we're going to start, the technology is there in order to really understand what people do. And I can tell you already, what they do is very different from what they say they're going to do. So we do that with location analytics. We use a lot of people tracking technologies, and there's different kinds of them, and they impact the way we do it. We can understand their location. We can understand the stay time. We can understand their path analysis inside the store. There is a component here of privacy. This is very different on how you work. Like, for instance, in Europe, we cannot work with imaging the way we work in the United States. I just had a conversation with somebody about facial recognition in China. Again, the Chinese have a very different way of allowing us to use our facial recognition. But facial recognition is one of the most interesting areas that is being developed today in the technology world. So the big question from an engagement point is, what behavior are you trying to change? And once you answer that question, you go to the next phase, which is convert, which is what are you going to do to actually convert? And this is another fundamental difference between the online world and the offline world, because in the online world, conversion is pretty straight obvious. You have a little button that says, do something, buy me, sign up, do this, do this. This is your call to action. In the physical store, that whole concept does not work. In essence, the whole store is a call to conversion. And this is where the optimization process comes in. So what moves the sales needle? This is a study that literally just came out. And it's huge. It has huge implications. It was done by the IHL group, and they basically found that Wi-Fi to associates increases your sales in the store times 7.6. Think about it. 7 times, almost 8 times more by giving Wi-Fi to associates. And if you look at all the other strategies, marketing in different channels, giving different preferences to the customers, doing the X channel, creating mobile POS, putting loyalty history in real time. All of those things, they're great. They double the sales. But the one thing that will significantly have a direct impact on your sales is giving Wi-Fi to the associates. And the question is why? And there's twofold benefits in here. One is on the consumer benefits. Because if people come to the store and they want to do something and they want to ask something, you want to make sure that somebody has the ability to actually give them answers. So if you're not missing a size, or you want to buy a television and you have to ask questions, you want to make sure that the associates have the ability to actually answer those questions. The other side of the Wi-Fi is that it actually helps the associate be a better associate. Scheduling is very obvious, but there's also a lot of training involved in this. So if you want to do training, and people misunderstand the impact of training on associates, it's really a highly beneficial terms. So let's go a little bit into the technology. Product tagging, you saw some example of it, of the impact of product training. As far as the store is important, is that we can understand the inventory turnover on the impact much more accurately, and what we actually do as far as fulfillment and activity-based costing inside the store. We use a lot of the product tagging information. Dynamic pricing is another one of those really big topics that people are talking about. I started my career in pricing, and one of the challenges with bringing dynamic pricing into the store is that people don't trust the technology. And there's a lot of implications on that. So while dynamic pricing sounds like the panacea, if you talk to a CIO, usually there's practical challenges inside the store. Another very important area of optimization, and this is where behavior becomes really important, is the concept of visual design. It's in merchandising. There's an impact whether you do it vertically or horizontally. The color wheel, which kind of colors are you using, and even small font sizes of your products. So visual experience or design, this is something which is very focused inside products, is now coming to the store, and you can see the difference in the sales. The last part in the conversion process is your associates. And I'm very happy to see that there's a beginning of a fundamental change and shift on how to turn your associates into brand ambassadors, how to take them out on the cost thought process into a revenue-generating mood. So brand ambassadors, this is the future of the store. So another question that comes up, okay, we got the consumer side, we got what we need to do. What happens? Why interested customers actually abandon? And the answer is friction. And the trick here is to understand how to prevent friction, but more important, to understand how to take those obstacles and turn them into an opportunity. And the one company who understood it from day one and made a success out of it is Amazon. And that's what most people do not understand, that every aspect of the success of Amazon, it's not about data. It's not about anything. It's about understanding how to take friction out of their sales channel, the sales funnel. Think about this. The first thing that Amazon did was to create the one click. What is the one click? The one click allows you to actually go in and buy automatically. But the buying process required you to be a member. That brought them to Prime. And now that you're part of Prime, you're going into a whole area of things. So the concept of friction and understanding how to challenge friction is one of the most beneficial areas of how to think about physical stores. Another obvious area is the last touch, is to how to do queue management. And a real story, but very quickly. My relationship with Kroger was once upon a time, happened on the fact that the VP of R&D was sitting across from me, and he said, oh, we're going to brand ourselves on queue management. And I'm actually one of the people who were the first to apply queue management in the world. So the last touch is important. You need to think about it. You need to understand how to look at it and how to manage it. Another part of queuing is the first touch. And most people forget this when you go and order coffee. It's all about the last touch. So there's a concept out there called queue flow that's a function of technology, but it's very important. For instance, yesterday I was in the airport waiting in line. You could see how the line can be better improved by just doing some small tweaks with technology. Bottlenecks. I can spend 3 hours just talking about bottlenecks, but most people don't understand how bottlenecks impact the store. And when we do this exercise with retailers, it's one of the most eye-opening things. You can put a display somewhere and you think it's going to increase your sales, but you don't understand that it creates a bottlenecks. So bottlenecks are important. The last part is the concept of abandon. And this is very critical to understand because it's underlined. It's hard to see it. It's hard to see it in the numbers, but preventing the abandon factor is probably one of the most important things that you want to do, because if there's one thing you don't want to have is a dissatisfied customer. So now we're coming back into the heart of the question is, okay, great. If we understand this all theoretically, how do we even start thinking about this? So the key to the process of optimization is data. Everything that you do is about data. Everything that I do is about data. It's not about what I think is right. It's not what about you think is right. And most importantly, it is not what about your CEO thinks is right. Every aspect of that process is data-driven. And this is the key to optimization of the store. So where's this data coming from? It's coming from different arena, and it's going into the store, part of this trend called United Commerce. And the Internet of Things is one of it. We saw some digital mirrors. Machine learning is a huge impact over retail and how we look at data. By the way, as my sponsor in Stanford said, Ange, he basically said, everything about machine learning starts and ends with the amount of data you have. So think about it. Data is critical to the future, and augmented reality is coming down the road, and it's still one of those things that people don't talk about. It's still one of those pop-up things, oh, we're going to go and see it. But I strongly believe that that will change retail. And the way it's embedded is that you think in the terms of the visual aspects of it, but it's also a product of data. So again, where's our data coming from? The most obvious one is the sales transactions. Many companies were brought over sales transactions, SKUs, social posting, a lot of data sets that you can do. But when it comes to the store, we're looking at activities. So how to think about optimization? We start with matrix. And it's not about just the matrix, but rather the behavioral concept or the context of those matrices, what those matrices are trying to do. So if, for instance, there's a fundamental difference between what we call customer to staff ratios and service intensity. they sound the same, but they are working completely different. Sales conversion is a key performance matrix. And you take one matrix and you say, okay, now we're going to actually work toward a certain aspect of performance. So we call our discipline optimization, conversion optimization, because we're looking at that sales conversion. But sales conversion is an outcome. And the way you measure that outcome is fundamentally different on the components of that matrix. So that's another aspect of how we think in terms of optimization. We find those areas of the store we want to maximize, and we identify the correct key performance matrix to it. There's a concept out there that was promoted by people that built Facebook, that built Google. And it's called the North Star. And I hope you remember this, because the North Star is the matrix that creates your organization. And most retailers come and tell me that comp sales is their North Star, or growth sales. But when it comes to optimization, and this is the way I look at it, and that's the way I think about it, is that the North Star is really a profit. Because in optimization, we look at details. We look at specific little projects. It's not a silver bullet. We're not going to change the store overnight. We're going to look at change here, and a change there, and a change there. And all of those changes have to be measured by one common denominator, and that's profit. It means that the costs that we're doing have to generate the revenue. So optimization is a process. You have to check. You have to create an hypothesis. You have to change as a result of the data that comes out of that project. And you have to check for conversion. So it's always this cycle. It's a never-ending concept. Optimization is not about creating something that happens today. It's not about a specific area. It's about a process. So that leads me to the last and most important point about optimization. Optimization is a team sport. And you have to have everybody together. So just one last thing is I gave this presentation to a group of data scientists. And we spent about 3 hours talking about the details of that on the data side. And at the end, this guy says up and asked him, what do you think about all of this? So he says, retail is interesting. Well, this is the point, guys, ladies and gentlemen. Retail is one of the most fascinating industries today in the world. We're in the midst of change. This is no longer about gut and intuition. This is about professional knowledge, our ability to take change, to use data, and power forward. We're dealing with technologies. We're dealing with new people coming in. It's a wonderful place to be. And I hope we share to share this with you. Thank you very much.